This is the Filmora.io travel series. I'm Justin, and I'm going to share with you some of my favorite tips on how to shoot a time-lapse. This is such a beautiful vantage point. This is the Lionsgate Bridge, which connects downtown Vancouver to the North Shore. A perfect place for a time-lapse. So time-lapses are a bunch of photos taken right after each other and played right after one another really fast. And that actually just makes things look like it's sped up. So if you look at the clouds now, nothing's happening. But if you take a bunch of pictures over a period of time and speed that up, it looks like they're moving really fast. And what I'm doing today is actually using 3 different cameras to shoot the same time-lapse. One is a professional DSLR camera that I have a lot of control over. I'm going to want to see how well that does, compared to the iPhone and compared to the GoPro. All 3 of these have a time-lapse mode in them, so I just want to see what the differences between them are, and we'll see how they turn out. So with the iPhone, you don't have as much control over the intervals as you do with the GoPro or the DSLR, so you kind of get what you get, but it's still a time lapse, and if that's what you need, that's what you need. The GoPro, you do have a little bit more flexibility with it. Right now we're at a 2-second interval, but you can choose 1-second intervals, 2, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, all the way up to a minute, I think. So you really do have a lot more control with the GoPro than you do with the iPhone. So what we're using today is the Canon 5D, and really pretty much any DSLR that you have, you will be able to make a time lapse. So if you got a DSLR, you're good to go. So tip number 1, you need to have a tripod or something to stabilize your camera. Because if you don't, it's going to be really shaky and the time-lapse is just not going to work. You will not have a time-lapse if your camera is not absolutely still. Our second tip is to turn off all auto stabilization. Same thing, if you have your auto stabilization turned on, it's going to be really shaky and you're going to have little jitters in your final time-lapse. So make sure you turn that off. So our third tip is to turn on aperture priority. Aperture priority is a really good setting for people who are just starting out with time-lapses, but it's also really good because it keeps up with the light. So as you're losing light, you will still be able to see what's in your frame instead of the frame going black. And then also just another thing to keep in mind, try to keep your f-stop at around 8, because you wouldn't want to go any lower than that because you want to have most of your frame in focus. So one more tip for the DSLR, turn off autofocus. Just turn it on to manual and manually set your focus. Because if you don't, your focus it's going to be hunting and it's going to be all over the place, and each image is going to be slightly different and it's going to look really choppy. Naturally, with time lapses, you're going to be doing a lot of waiting. You're just going to be waiting for the time lapse to be finished, and so are the cameras. But the cameras are working and they're using their batteries a lot. So make sure that you have extra batteries for your cameras. iPhones, you can't put in an extra battery in there, so just make sure that you bring an external battery charger with you. I'm actually using one right now to charge the iPhone as it's going, so it'll be hopefully 100% when we're done too. So there's a really cool app that I found called Sunseeker, and it's a really helpful app for planning out your shots during the day and especially for time-lapse shots. And what Sunseeker does, it tells you exactly where the sun is right now and where it's going to be when. So I can tell right now, obviously the sun is set, but the sun is right here, and it's going to keep going down throughout the night. And it started over here, went all the way down. So especially for time-lapse shots, you can tell exactly where it's going to be and when. So the sun has set, and I think we are finally ready to check out what we got from our time lapses. Let's go check them out. So now that I've had a chance to warm up, I think it's finally time to check out these time-lapse shots from the iPhone, GoPro, and DSLR. So here is the iPhone footage. The first thing that I can notice is that I see the exposure and brightness trying to compensate during the time-lapse itself. It's not super smooth, but it's pretty good. Now when we move to the GoPro, we can see that it is a little bit better. I'm not noticing the exposure and brightness steps as much, but I see a little bit more grain and noise than in the iPhone, which is interesting. And now let's take a look at the DSLR. Now for me, this this is my favorite out of all of them. It's a lot cleaner, you don't have as much grain, and there is obviously no exposure or brightness steps. One of the really great things about either shooting on the GoPro or the DSLR is in post, you can zoom in. You can shoot at 4K and then zoom in later. You can't exactly do that on the iPhone. They're all great time lapses, and I could use any one of them. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video, and I look forward to seeing your time lapses. So make sure to subscribe to this channel and join Filmora.io, your YouTube creator community. I think I'm gonna go have a bath now.